Hey everyone, welcome back to the Meme Team podcast, where we discuss viral pop culture moments in movies, TV, sports, music, tech, and politics. I'm your host, Sonia, and this week we're discussing brands moving into Hollywood as the studio system contracts. We're talking Scorsese doing TikToks for an espresso company, Mamdani, and what happens when a politician figures out that governance is content that people actually want to watch. The WSJ declared that American tourists are unstoppable, and I have thoughts on what that means for the world and getting Americans to travel to your country. And then we're finishing out with Hilary Duff's Lucky Me tour, which is not a nostalgia play per se, even though it is very easy to read it that way. Today, I'm joined by my very good friend, Gia Jasing, brand strategist, behavior change marketing specialist with over 10 years doing marketing in impact spaces, and she runs her own consultancy practice. Welcome, Gia.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Awesome. So let's dive right into it. So all of a sudden, brands are devouring Hollywood. What does that mean? So most of us that are paying attention to Hollywood have noticed that it's just shrinking and shrinking. The industry has shed about 49,000 jobs over the past decade and is producing nearly 50% fewer TV shows than before the strikes. Into that vacuum, we're seeing brands step in, not just as sponsors or as brand placements, but as studios to create their own content to bring in fans by using big names in directing and executives and talent in order for people to be paying attention to good content. So a few of the brands that we're seeing, Gap hired Pam Kaufman, who's a former Paramount exec, as a chief entertainment officer. Kraft has Heinz The Kitchen. There's PG&G Studios, Starbucks Studios, Dick's Sporting Goods, Cookie Jar, and A Dream Studios. Elf Cosmetics also have formal entertainment divisions. This means that brand content budgets keep growing. And into this, we're having stars jump into the effort. So some of the commercials or TikToks or social content you may have seen are Martin Scorsese starring in Lavazza's Family Blend series on YouTube and TikTok, with his daughter Francesca directing. Barry Jenkins directed the Prada Fall/Winter 2026 short film. We've seen Timothée Chalamet fronting Kalshi. Ben Affleck is working with Duncan and Stella Artois. Matt Damon has a rap alter ego that came out this week called The Nomad, which is Damon backwards, to promote his water.org charity. There was everything that happened with the Nike and the World campaign. And then obviously many of us have seen, and some of us know, people that work at Maximum Effort with Ryan Reynolds and George Stewie. They have very famous examples of responding to viral content trends. Very famously last year, the astronomer situation that happened with the Kiss Cam. And before that, the Peloton commercial that was responding to a viral Peloton commercial. So I think what I find really important here is that we talk a lot about how important good content is, narrative, storytelling, messaging. And at a time when people in Hollywood are getting less and less jobs working on TV shows and movies, they need to find somewhere to go work. And so that's where brands are kind of stepping in and filling in that space in order to get audiences to be paying attention to content and story narratives that are out there. And so we've seen a variety of new types of content that come out. Some of the ones we've talked about before, the InStyle YouTube series. It's like a web series that really doesn't have anything to do with the magazine itself, but is its own standalone thing. We've seen a variety of TikToks and podcasts and all that. And one of the ones we talked about recently as well is how Netflix is having in-show sponsorships for some of their shows, including Running Point, the Kate Hudson led vehicle that had 6 brands that are featured inside the show. So it shows that a lot of both brands themselves, but also the streaming platforms are starting to think about how they can work with brands in a new, unique way in order to kind of help pay for how expensive making TV shows and movies are. Gia, I know you used to be in LA, so this is also
Yeah.
very close to, what you used to know when you were, here. Have you seen
Yeah.
any of these shows? Would love to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's all about grabbing attention, right? There's so
Mhm.
many different mediums that people are watching and there's so much content overload. Everyone's a creator. How do they differentiate, right? So everyone's
Mhm.
like, well, we're going to create our own studios and do our own content to get people in, whether they work with creators or celebrities. I think that's like their choice, but I think it shows that there you have to find a way to differentiate. And I think that's what I mean, who would have thought Dick's Sporting Goods would have like a entertainment content
Yeah,
division? I mean, I haven't seen anything that's come out of it
sure.
yet, but
You're
I
not the
mean
target
the fact that
audience, I'd imagine.
I am not. No, no. So I'm glad that, I mean, I guess they're like, we have to do something to
Yeah.
make sure people care about us now. I mean, it's really interesting to me that like Martin Scorsese and like other people are like signing on. It's really a high bar
Mhm,
for
mhm.
talent, right? Like that's that they're trying to get those kind of people. I think it's cool. I don't know if it's resulting in brand recall. I think that
Mhm.
I would love to see like a case study because there's so many brands out there.
Yeah.
I mean, are you really that different that I'm gonna remember? Like, I'll remember Martin Scorsese, and that's the entire Super Bowl problem, right? It's like I remember all of you big celebrities, but do I remember exactly which brand you did that thing for? Oh no. I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
going to be the
yeah.
true test of this
Like whether it
method that
works or not for
everyone's been
sure.
doing it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think one
exactly.
of the things that's like stands out to me is how we have moved beyond starring in ads or commercials as a cringy thing that stars
Yeah,
would never
yeah,
do, right? Like I remember in like the 90s or the early aughts that the main thing that we would hear about celebrities doing commercials were always in Asia, right? Like where it
right.
would never be seen by Americans and it would never like devalue what they were doing because it
Like
was
they're
seen
selling
as
out.
cringy. Exactly. This whole idea of like selling
Right,
out. And then now
right,
when Ben Affleck partners with Duncan, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense because he's a Boston guy. He's obviously loves Duncan
right.
as a brand. So it's like that brand partnership or the brand alignment really makes sense. Um
Yeah. Mhm.
so that's where it's like, are we going to continue seeing these, right? Like the one that's standing out right now, I guess, because, whenever I watch Dodgers games, it comes up is Dua
Yeah,
Lipa and George Clooney doing the Nestle, coffee. I don't even know what it
yeah,
is, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just know it's some coffee brand. Um, but it is
Exactly.
that I feel like that's a typical like commercial where it's like it's just a
Yeah,
commercial. There's a difference between, Ben Affleck, directing and like coming up with the,
yeah,
ideas and everything. And then what I, had mentioned earlier with brands working directly with like the brands. So that was like Netflix, right? The other example that we've talked about is F1 the movie where they went out and got actual companies to sponsor the car itself so it would look like real F1 cars, but those were real brands paying to be featured on the car,
right.
and like paying Apple or sorry, paying for that directly to the movie, which was a
Yeah,
different model than has been done before. It's usually just been like,
yeah,
you get your car, the Aston Martin is the James Bond card because there's a deal there,
yeah.
right? Or in Marvel, like the Fords and all that, or Cadillacs or whatever get featured, right? So that product placement is slightly different. Um, the other thing too is like the flip side of it, right? Where it's like Barry Jenkins working with Prada or Martin Scorsese working with Lavazza. It elevates that brand a little bit
Yes,
more, where it's like it
yes.
adds gravitas because it's like, oh wow, Barry Jenkins, like the Oscar-winning director,
Right,
is
right,
working with a
right.
brand to showcase their products in a way that makes it more cinematic. And I
It's
think
like
that that's
they're
like
good, so this must be good. Kind
right.
of, that's the thought that I think that people have.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So for me, it's like it makes sense. And at a time when we're talking about brands and brand awareness and trying to maintain a certain level of like, say with Prada, luxury, right? The fact that Barry
Yeah,
Jenkins is willing to partner with Prada makes sense that
yeah,
Prada would do that because it fits with, you know, what we suppose their brand narrative is of being luxury, high class, you know, all this.
Yeah, yeah.
But on the flip side, right, the Kalshi and like Timothy Chalamet one, like that was like, oh, you know, oh, we saw it recently
Weird.
with the Kylie Jenner and Meta glasses,
Oh,
right?
that
Like
was
we talked
bad.
about that,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
that
Where
we
it's
did.
like,
We did.
yeah, where we talked about how that like it makes sense for both where it's like, you know, people aren't necessarily looking to Kylie to be the moral arbiter of any brand, right?
Right.
So you know,
Right.
the fact that Meta
Exactly.
went for her like makes sense because like Meta is trying to target her audience who like doesn't expect her to like be you know, to have that moral like or
Yeah.
ethical like clause or whatever.
Right.
So it was like easy for them. Plus, it's also a way for Meta to hide behind Kylie Jenner's like brand and persona, right? Where it's like
Right. Of
in
course.
right instead of you know, people asking questions about privacy and security and like their Meta glasses and like, you know, what's going on with that, they're talking about how Kylie Jenner is like the face of Meta,
It's
right?
also access. It's also
Hmm.
access, right? Like the Kardashians are known for allowing people access into their lives. So this is like another extension of that, just like from a little more up close.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I was thinking about on the flip side a little bit is how what happens when branded content and entertainment like get enmeshed. And you know, I think it's going to be really interesting to see if the audiences like catch on because it's like they come to ads for ads and they come to entertainment for entertainment, you know what I mean? And I think when the two of them get so close together, I think it'll be interesting to see if audiences like get turned off from the brand. Like I'm going to be
Yeah.
curious to see that because it's like am I being sold to like all the time, you
Hmm.
know? In these subtle
Yes.
ways, or is it like clearly, yes, or is it clearly like, is this an ad? You know, I
Right.
think, and the brands that are able to not look too eager, I think, to try and
Hmm.
sell you
Hmm.
something will be the ones that kind of win this transition. Because the more obvious it is, the more, I don't know, cringe it is in a
Hmm.
way, you know, like they're trying
Hmm.
too hard. That's what I feel.
Yeah,
Because like
yeah,
when
yeah,
you
yeah.
like, is it really authentic? You know, like that word gets thrown around a lot. And it's like, how do you define authentic brand content? You know, like it's like almost a misnomer.
Yeah, totally. But also that brings up the interesting, you know, question of at a time where we are seeing AI usage go up and brands use it, is this not a way to go around that by saying, no, we're still
Yeah,
using real humans and real
yeah,
artists,
yeah. I mean,
people that you know by name that are willing to like work with us to
yep,
elevate our, you know, our standard and our brand, as opposed to those other
yeah,
brands that are using AI. Like today, it came out that, you know, the big four accounting firms, you know, PwC and
right, right,
EY
right.
are using AI to put out thought leadership content on like their blogs and stuff. And it's just
Yeah,
like, hmm,
really
maybe I
cringe.
would prefer for you to work with, you know, a celebrity or, you know, an influencer or
Right,
something
right.
to try to get to your audience as opposed to, you know, using AI because it's easy, right? Because you think we're
Right.
not looking, because you think we don't care, right? At least this to me, partnering with Hollywood and like big stars to me at this point still seems as if they care to like elevate their brand to
Yes.
the point that they're
Yes.
willing to pay real artists to come up with a storyline. And sure, it may be kitsch,
Yes.
may be weird. I think we're still kind of figuring out if any of these like YouTube series or TikTok series are actually going to convert to anything. But
Yeah.
one other point to bring up here is how much easier it is to track numbers by using
Yeah.
YouTube and using
Of
TikTok and
course.
Instagram
Yeah.
versus putting ads on TV, right? Where it's like really
Yeah.
hard to determine what the conversion rate is
Yeah.
for any art that, you know, gets put out there.
Yeah.
Um, so that's also like an interesting to think about here, where it's like going to where you're going to get that data far more easily makes a lot more sense,
Yeah.
right? Even though obviously a lot of the streamers, you know, Netflix refuses to share numbers of like how their
Yeah.
shows are doing or how their ads are doing. By seeing what the actions that they're taking shows to me that like the direction of where they're headed, right?
Yeah,
So Running Point was pretty much the first show to do like the six brands in the show, but I think,
right.
some of their other shows are going to start doing that going forward. So I'm going to
100%.
keep an eye out to see what it is that they start doing.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the ad behind the ad, right? Like when Apple did
Mhm.
their new logo, they had like a whole video
Right, right, right.
about how they did it and the craft behind it. And I
Hmm.
think they did that with the MacBook Neo marketing as well. So I
Hmm.
think a lot of them are like, look, real people, real craft, not
Hmm.
AI, I mean, I prefer this over AI slop, so
Hmm.
I'm good with that. I'm good with
Yeah,
Martin
yeah,
Scorsese directing a TikTok, like in doing a TikTok. I love that.
yeah. Bring up another interesting point where another marketing angle that I'm seeing now of like content being created are all those behind the scenes. The Apple, how like the glass logo was made, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I'm seeing a lot of that coming out in movies, right? So Project Hail Mary, right? They had a parallel marketing campaign happening where all the
Mm-hmm.
like the director of photography, the behind the scenes, the creators of the sets were all posting
Mm-hmm.
content of how they created not just the rocket in the world, but Rocky, like how the puppet was
Yeah,
being worked.
yeah.
I just saw that for Spider-Man Brand New Day, they were doing the behind the scenes of how like the stunts were actually filmed and how they came
Yep,
together to
I
basically
saw that.
show you how real they look as opposed
Yep,
to the CGI mess that we're thinking Avengers Doomsday is going to be, right?
I know.
So like that's a really interesting thing that we're seeing happen, right? For a lot of the shows, right? Like when I like I'll always watch like at the end of HBO shows they do like the
Yeah,
behind the scenes
the behind. Yep, yep,
like conversation stuff. I think we're going to continue seeing a rise in that of just showing how things kind of can come together and have those discussions, right? I'm seeing on Netflix, like they're doing actual podcasts that, go along with a show so that you're talking to the
yep.
stars and
Mhm.
seeing how everything kind of came together. So I really think like that's an avenue of content that people are more and more interested in.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna, the more that I mean, look, they're all using AI. I'm sure they're
Hmm.
using it in some way or the other, but they
Hmm.
don't want to lose the audience, right? They don't want to lose people's trust that they're hiring real people and doing real things. And so I think this is a way to show people that, look, we're still doing real stunts and actors, and
Hmm.
people get more excited that, look, okay, look at everything that we can achieve, even though there's probably some element of AI in some part of the filmmaking process that they're using. But I think this is really smart to show the authenticity of it all, right?
Yeah, 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 for sure. Okay. A couple of lessons from me are basically what Gia and I were just talking about, where it's like, how do you show how you're making this content? I think people want
Yeah,
to see that realness, that authenticity of how the idea came together, how everything, came together, to show the human aspects to it as opposed to, the AI. Those are very easy wins, for anybody. I mean, if you're creating any type of content, just showing the process behind it. I think, as we'll talk about in the next topic as well, people want that sort of content. The other
yeah,
one being that we're seeing, I don't want to say necessarily strange bedfellows partner, because obviously brands and Hollywood have been working together, but I think because of the way that the economy is functioning right now, more brands and more industries are welcome, are open to working
yeah,
together. So I think like now's the time to be pitching those crazy ideas that like might get
yeah,
attention just because it's different, because it's new, it's unique,
yeah,
and just like reaching out to people and trying to create those sorts of partnerships instead of trying to do things in house all the time. Most of us have marketing budget that we're able to spend. What's a new way
yeah,
that like you can put that together? Maybe you can't hire Martin
yeah,
Scorsese for your brand, but there are other, stars
yeah,
that you can do, right? Like we saw last year with Ramp, with Kevin from The Office, right? Like that
right,
was a
right.
new novel thing that like went viral because nobody had seen it before. So think about those types of ideas of like how you can kind of tap into Hollywood and like filmmakers and the creatives that like have the bona fides,
Yeah.
and that are out there looking for jobs right now.
I think it's going to change the way Hollywood works. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that model shifts moving forward. But I think, yeah, the lessons are, I mean, this is your shot to be the pioneer of some new ideas that can cross over between worlds. I think this is the time that people are very receptive to it.
Awesome. We can move on to your
Yeah.
topic.
So I have been on X and seeing so much of Mamdani's content. And I think it's been really interesting that he has figured out something that I'm going to call governance as content. So, New Yorkers have been posting videos of their city problems, like potholes, the water leakage, whatever. And Mamdani's responding to them directly on social media. He's filming them and then, he's like getting them fixed and whatever. And he is there personally. Um, and I think it's really smart because he ran his whole campaign on social media, like a big chunk of it. And now he's showing that he's governing on social media too. Um, I think every politician uses social media the same way, right? It's like you're posting outward, you're providing information, and then followers are receiving it and they're like engaging with it if they want to. But he is doing it differently. He is actively like creating a two-way dialogue where he's saying, you post about this, I'll like show up and actually try and fix it. Look, we all know he's not fixing every pothole in New York himself, but I think it's really smart that he is choosing to publicize things that he's doing and things that he's actively governing for the world to see because it feels like he's on top of everything, even if he may not be. He probably is, but even if he's not super on top of everything right now, it makes it look like he is. And isn't that the whole point, right? Um, he also has this like talk show called Talk with the People. So he's like inviting people in. And I think people are so starved for basic competency that him just being like a regular person and talking to people and showing up, which should be the baseline for any politician, is like blowing people's minds, right? Did you see the tickets for teens lottery thing that he
I
launched
did. Yeah.
like a few days ago or yesterday or something?
I think it was today.
That was it was today? Yeah, it
Mhm.
was really good. So he's basically giving 2,000 free tickets via lottery for high school students. And the productions themselves donated it. So it's not like he spent public money on it, but it's such a feel good, immediate win, right? Because it's like, look, I'm making the arts accessible. And if you look at some of the news about Mamdani right now, there's a lot of positive, but also there is a lot of like policy stuff, which
Mhm.
which sucks for every politician, right? Like his the New York property tax thing, it's getting into some trouble with some judges. He's getting flack on social media for it. The free buses thing, the free groceries thing, people don't love those ideas. So there is like some pushback on the policy side. He isn't a magical fairy that's like doing every single thing right.
Mhm.
But I think that makes his social media strategy even smarter because he's like, yeah, okay, like this stuff is like maybe getting a hiccup here and this stuff has a hiccup there, but I'm actually fixing things that New Yorkers want. And how do you argue with that? Because you can't be like, no, you're not. And he's like, yes, I am. So it's very, very smart for him to do that. What do you
Yeah, I
think?
think I think one thing that like really sticks out is kind of what you're talking about, where it's like he's doing so many of the things that make things run, like the potholes and
Yeah,
fixing the road and doing those small things to show consistency, so that when he does put out a policy thing that people might not agree with, like
yep,
the grocery stores with the
right, right.
discounted products, he can just be like, can you just trust me because you trust that I can do these other things? So he's willing to stake his reputation on these things. And the crazy thing is
Yeah,
it's working, right?
it is.
One video that I wanted to point out that went viral on TikTok and then, Twitter this week was this guy essentially doing, a skit about how when you're talking to New Yorkers, Mamdani pops up like a superhero, like he's always there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Funny because it wasn't just that he's saying that Mamdani is there. He very explicitly said, what? So like Mamdani's just like showing up and like fixing the electrical problem. And he's like, no, it was one of our highly intelligent like city employees that like knows their
Yeah.
job, knows what they're doing, right? So
Yeah.
it's both, right? Where it's like not only is Mamdani showing up and being the face of all the stuff that's working in government, but he's also elevating the city employees that make the
Yep.
actual like city run, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's so smart because it's like it's not him just being like me, I'm doing this. No, he's
Yeah.
elevating the actual public city employees that are
Yeah.
doing the work, right? So when the potholes get fixed, it's like, yeah, I came and like fixed maybe like one or two of them, but the 100,000 that were filled were like our city employees, and aren't
Yeah.
we so thankful
Yeah.
for them, right? Um,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
when the Knicks celebration was happening, right? He was involving like one of the ones that stood out to me was the garbage cans, right? So it's like you were
Yes.
involving
Yes.
the Department of like Parks and Recreation one, but you were also involving like the garbage men who like
The sanitation
right,
department. Yeah.
sanitation, right, Department of Sanitation. We're getting like props for doing their job, and like when does that ever happen, right? And I think
Never.
that's so great because it's like it's showing that like how important it is for city employees, to do their jobs and make the city function, and then giving them like a sunshine to share that
Yeah.
spotlight, right?
It's
um
very like you look good, we look good kind of
right.
vibe, right? Because he's going out there, he's being the face as he is, like as the mayor,
Hmm.
he's like visible everywhere. Like you look,
Hmm.
there's Mamdani, right? Like, and he's making sure that
Hmm.
he's making himself visible. Like that is part of his job. The PR is part of his job. He's
Yeah.
like, I'm here, I'm here, I'm also here, I'm also here. Like I'm involved,
Hmm.
even though he's not doing all the work, but because he's so involved, it's giving like a shine to
Hmm.
all the other people that are doing all the work, and it's uplifting them. And I
Hmm.
think the result will be that people will be less frustrated with city workers, right? And
Yeah.
government workers. And they usually are, because it's like, no, 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 look, we're actually doing it. And I
Yeah.
promise we'll get to you because we got to that guy, right? We
Hmm.
got we got to his problem, we got to her problem, we'll get to you as well. And I think that that's really, really smart because, like you said, he is going to have policies and moments as mayor that are not like this honeymoon phase, that are not perfect and not popular and not, some people are going to be unhappy with him. I'm sure they already are, but it's because of this strategy that I think he might still win like public opinion, even
I
if
mean, he's at
there's
like
backlash.
75% like satisfaction rate in New York right now, right? And on top of
Yeah.
that, so he's fixed the 170,000 potholes. They have the lowest murder rate on record. He
Yeah.
balanced the $12 billion deficit
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
government. Um,
Yeah.
and it's oh, sorry, his favorability is at 69%.
Still
So
pretty
that's
good.
still very high
Very,
for
very
being
good.
the mayor of the largest city in our country. And I think that
Yeah.
he's learned a lot from his campaigning, but then also in getting that like loop of feedback, right? There's a huge reason why it continues being on YouTube and on TikTok, where you get those
Yep.
numbers, right? And the more that you get
Yeah.
people to participate with you and be in on the
And
joke and the
Twitch.
content, right, and Twitch, the more that
Yeah.
people are interested, particularly the young people who have been disillusioned by government,
Yep.
because they feel as if they're not getting heard, A, or B, they don't feel as if they're being supported in a way that
Right.
makes them feel a part of the city, which is like
Yeah.
a huge thing that obviously happens in New York, because you have so many transplants, right? Um, I do want to bring up
Yeah.
how AOC has been on her own content journey this week,
Yeah.
talking about her going through the egg freezing process now that
Yeah.
she wants to have that option, right? And she's also another politician who's super great on camera and being able to bring people in on the journey with her. And I think that there's a lot to learn here from both politicians because
Yeah.
each of them is doing it in their own way,
Yeah.
while being authentic in their own way, but then also in how they engage with people and bring them on the journey.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a lesson for all marketers of like how you can speak to your constituents and then like beyond that, get them interested in your journey and follow you along as you're doing what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And by
Yeah.
showing that like competency, I mean, we've talked about competency porn here a couple times. And Mamdani has always been one of my favorite examples of that because he's
Yeah.
so great at being able to not only choose the things that will highlight the most competency, but then is able to get on camera and
Yeah.
talk about it and describe it in a way that really seems as if like, why hasn't this been happening the whole time
Yeah.
with politicians before, and then you realize that part of it is because he's able to talk about what he's doing in a way that's accessible to the audience, and not very many politicians A, can do that, but
Yeah.
B, are actually interested in doing that. I think the Broadway thing is going to be successful is because it's a partnership of the theaters coming to him and
Yeah.
like being like, oh, we want to give you these like free tickets
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
teenagers.
You look good, we look good. I think
Exactly, right?
yeah. Yeah.
But the other point that I want to highlight is that now I really feel like companies and industries are going to be going to him and approaching him right after seeing that it is successful, that you
Yeah.
get like more virality and more
Yeah.
attention when you partner with him willingly, right? So this
Right.
happened during the World Cup, right? They got
Yeah. You got the free screenings.
right. Well, not just the free screenings, but you got tickets to go to
Oh yeah, he
the
got the
to
cheaper tickets. Yeah.
yeah, the cheaper tickets to go to an actual game.
Yeah.
And then like New
Yeah.
Jersey, which is the other, which is the state where the actual stadium is, we're like,
Yeah.
wait, why do the New Yorkers get it and not us, But it's
Well,
like
talk to
because
your dude.
exactly, right? But it's
Yeah.
because, Mamdani is out there and he can get attention for this. So of course
Yeah.
FIFA's like, yeah, we'll give you, tickets so
Yeah.
that we get attention and people are on our side. So these are
Yeah.
things that like brands and, companies should be thinking about. Like how do you work in partnership with, I mean, is it Mamdani? Is it New York? Like obviously, for this,
Yeah.
it's like that. But are there other like ways that you can partner with other people in your industry to lift both boats up
Yeah.
instead of just
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
things by yourself?
Yeah. And I think one point I wanted to make is I think we're going to see people try to replicate governance as content, right? Like
Hmm.
other politicians or other, city council people, whatever. And I think it's not a bad idea, but I think that people need to be careful because everyone's not Mamdani. So you cannot take his
Yeah.
exact playbook and try to apply it to yourself. I think the key points to remember is you have to be, and I'm scarred by this word, but you have to be authentic in that way, right?
Hmm.
Where it
Hmm.
has to be like true to who you are. And if you haven't done anything for your people before, and you're suddenly like, I'm a man of the people or I'm a woman of the people, whatever,
Hmm.
I'm one of you. And it's gonna come off so badly because you need to have actual things that you're doing to back it up, right? And you have to actually care about the people you're with. So if you just use it as a content strategy, it's not gonna work. It's probably gonna make it
Hmm.
worse. So I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
mean,
gonna
we're
be
seeing
really
that happen
interesting to
here
see
in
how people follow
LA.
that up. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, LA Mayor Karen Bass posted on on social media recently all these things that she had won in
Mm,
Hollywood for like the industry, and then people started calling out and saying like, this actually wasn't you. This was like developers. This was
right,
the movie
right.
studios. This was other groups that she's taking
The credit
the
for their
credit
hard work.
for. And it's just like
Yeah.
you don't want to be that person, right? Because
No.
she's in a very contentious race for
Yeah.
mayor that's being
Yeah.
voted on in November, and instead of her being able to talk about things that she's done, people are like coming after her and being like, well, actually you didn't do that, right? So these are things that like
Yeah.
not any politician can come out and do, right? It's like you have to put in the work, and I think that that's what
Yeah.
he's done really well in, is like
Yeah.
doing the work of like constantly, doing those simple things that like make the city run and look as if it's running efficiently.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then also then using that to grow his reputation and not vice
Yeah.
versa.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be really important. And I think sometimes people take the wrong lesson from what he's doing.
Oh yeah.
And the lesson is you do the work, but use the medium to amplify what you're actually doing. You
Hmm.
can't just talk about what you're doing when you're not doing it.
Yeah.
So I am really enjoying watching him. He's, closing the loop on things. He's buying goodwill. And I think it'll really insulate him when something goes sideways. And things will go sideways. That's just how politics works. He's not going to have a win every single day. But I think
Hmm.
he's building the foundation for when something doesn't go his way. And I think that's really smart.
We can move on to the next topic. So the Wall Street Journal put out an article this week about the rise of the unstoppable American tourist, basically going into how Americans took a record 24 million trips to Europe in 2025. That compared to Germans, the Spanish, and French, Americans spend 2x what they do in countries. And basically talking about how Americans went from in 1990 fewer than 5% holding passports to now being more than 50% of Americans. And there was what I found interesting about this was just this whole idea of so many things that are like, coming out around the same time. So I think it was last week. New York Magazine posted an article about influencers not being welcome in Nantucket, in a Nantucket store, and having that go viral. This whole
Yeah.
idea, I saw, somebody posting today about how there was a like 1 hour line to go take a photo, like an Instagram photo in Santorini with like the blue,
Yeah.
buildings and
Hmm.
backgrounds, and just like how travel has changed. Obviously because of influencers, but then how that has then led to this rise of American tourists, but then also in, recognizing that this is just the beginning, right? If Americans are spending that much more money in countries, those countries are obviously going to have to start catering to those American tourists because that's what you do, right? One of the things that like stood out to me about like what the article was saying is that not only are countries actively seeking out American tourists. So Portugal took over Times Square to put ads out there to get people to go out to, Portugal. Greece has done similarly. So it's like they're actively searching for American tourists to go to their countries. So what we're seeing is the rise in two different groups of Americans, and those audiences require different marketing methods, right? So you have wealthy boomers who do more cruises and all-inclusive resorts, that like going to countries and getting like custom tours and are willing to like drop, a lot of money to do the things that they want to do. And then you have restless Gen Zers who are doing more of that like FOMO type travel where they don't want to spend the most amount of money, but they look to influencers and what's going viral on TikTok and Instagram to plan their vacations and then go there and experience those things by themselves, but don't necessarily care about like the city, if that makes sense, right? Like it's more about
Yeah.
posting
It's like
on
checking it
social
off your
media.
list.
Right. It's like checking off on lists,
Yeah.
posting on social media and, showing other people that you're just traveling, but not necessarily, doing deeper dives into like the countries or cities that you're in to explore, beyond that. So it does kind of like raise the question of like how can you get people to expand beyond those, top what like 10, 10, 20 cities that like people always go to, because that's obviously a huge thing that like people that these countries want. So Gia, did you see this? Would love to know what you think. Just kind of, now that you're in India, is that a thing that, you see more and more? Are Americans going there?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not really sure about Americans in India, but I've seen a lot. There is a good amount of tourism, but I think Europe is taking like the biggest chunk of
Yeah.
people. It's closer, cheaper probably. But yeah, I think there's a lot of FOMO. I think
Hmm.
that has been manufactured with social media, right? Everyone's like, I gotta go there.
Hmm.
Travel used to be the thing that you got to do if you made enough money or you had like time, luxury, wealth, whatever. And now it's almost like everyone loves to travel, right? Like if you just look at the dating apps, it's always like everyone's like loves to travel. And I think it's become a thing that you do as part of your like personality and as part of your existence now. That maybe wasn't the case 10, 15, 20 years ago. I think it's you will see, I'm sure with social media, the kind of access that you have to get a window into other people's worlds that push you into that FOMO, right? You're like, I have to do it. Even if you're not super into it, it's kind of you have to do it. I think that's great though for some of these lesser known places, but I'm wondering at what point is like Greece going to be like too many people? We like our economy is collapsing. Like the locals are not happy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that Nantucket story, but there's been backlash in Barcelona, right, with like Airbnb and how many
Yeah,
tourists like go to the city. Um, And I think there is, a bit of that sentiment of, the locals not liking the tourists, both
yeah,
because they feel as if they're not being respectful, but then
yeah,
also I'm sure that, they feel as if their needs are no longer the ones that are being catered to
yeah,
because Americans have more money. And that's
yeah,
certainly kind of what came across in that article. And what I was thinking about,
yeah,
like, as they're talking about how Americans are spending, $300. I think it was $350 to the Germans spending like 200 and the Spanish
right,
spending 150 and the French spending 100, right? Like that's a
right.
substantial amount of money that makes localities make decisions
Yeah,
to
yeah,
cater to Americans. That's one thing. The other thing too is like what I was thinking a lot more of is that this does provide like a lot of opportunity for those enterprising, tourist companies that do want to cater to Americans and provide unique and custom travel ideas or locations, right?
yeah.
One of the things that I've seen popularize a lot more is going back to travel agents, right? Where it's like
Hmm.
you want to pay for somebody to create a unique experience for you and your family, so that you
Yeah,
don't have to do it, right?
yeah,
So I've seen that kind of, come on the rise. One of the things actually that I was talking to a journalist to recently about was they were talking about sustainability travel and like, is that still a
yeah,
trend? Do we see that growing? And I was like, honestly, no. Like, I think that was a thing that
yeah,
like people cared about in like 2020 and like 2022, maybe, um, as like when like a ZERP era thing of like when the good times are happening and the money was like flowing. But now what I think
yeah,
people are looking more for is value. Like, I want to know that
yeah,
if I'm spending my money, I'm actually going to be able to say that I had a unique experience. I was able to post on social media about it. And it was worth it
yeah,
for me to like do this, right? So I'm seeing more of the rise in experiences overall. So we're seeing that
yeah,
in terms of going to like sports events, right? Like that
yeah,
Super Bowl final, the Knicks, Spurs like events, the World Cup events, right? And then people want to go to these things because it's like you can't, it's really hard to do. And so that's kind of how I see these like countries. I feel like there's gonna be a tipping point, I think. I'm predicting anyway, of like the countries being, the top 10. Okay, we're done with those. Like what's that next level of
what's
like
next?
unique and like different that we can do that's not what everybody else is doing. And I think that this is where the opportunity lies for
Yeah,
marketers and for, countries to like think about like how do we create curated experiences for Americans that are enticing to them, but then also do it in a way that still upholds our authentic values of
yeah,
like how we see ourselves and want to put ourselves out into the world. And I think the World Cup was a great way of seeing naturally how countries can do that, right? Like I think one of my
yeah,
favorite examples was of the Norwegian team, right? Like, they became so popular with Americans because they came up
yeah,
with a way to involve people in their own cultural things, right? Like
yeah,
coming up with like the road chant and like the
yeah,
Viking outfits, right? Like it
yeah,
was all these things that like naturally fit with them and their history. And they found a way to like invite Americans into that, right? Similarly with the Scottish, I think, right? In Boston, where it's like,
yeah,
I think they even became like sister cities, right? And we saw like this convergence of multiple cultures coming together in Mexico, the Koreans, like that was like a really cool way of seeing, everybody come together. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can try to, do that and while still maintaining our own authenticity for, our countries and the pride that we have, while still being, welcoming to Americans who do want to spend that money. And if they have that
Yeah.
money and want to spend it, why wouldn't you want that?
Uh, I think we're going to see a rise. I'm not sure I love it or hate it, but I think
Yeah.
we're going to see a rise of content experiences, like
Mm-hmm.
opportunities to create content, right?
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of people that travel to create content and not to like experience,
Yeah.
not to be part of the culture. I think that's like secondary, not that they don't want that,
Hmm.
but I think that we will see the rise of like content packages,
Yeah.
where you can like have someone follow you around
Hmm.
or, take you to the spots and film something for you and help you film and do all these things. And I think we're going to see a rise of that in
Hmm.
Europe for sure. I think that's going to be um reaching that kind of that influencer, chronically online person that is interested in that aspect of travel. That's going
Yeah,
to be a
yeah,
new
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's funny because we're talking about Europe a lot, but one of the countries that I see
Yeah.
people go to all the time is Japan, right?
Yeah.
Like that seems to
Yep.
be at like the top of so many, people's lists. And maybe that's just
Yep.
me and my tech bubble that I'm in. But it also, brings up that like even if the like median or like average American tourist is only going to these top cities, there are a lot of like early adopters that want to try that new thing. And especially with like influencers, right? Like who need to create that sort of content, right? What are these ways that we can, try to bring up other countries and elevate those countries to also be getting more interest and attention from, the American tourist?
Yeah. Tourism marketing. I mean, a different kind of brand trip
Yeah,
if
yeah, yeah,
they
yeah,
really
right.
want to do it. Bring content creators over to your country to highlight the beautiful things there. Never know, it's going to be a thing,
Yeah,
possibly.
I mean that's what works for Portugal and Greece, right? Like right now,
Yeah.
they're still like two of the top most visited countries right now
Yeah.
because Americans like have been enticed to go there, right?
Yep.
And I really think that like that's something that like countries should and cities should figure out, right? It's like how to market their country in a way that is enticing to Americans in order to get them to come over and spend their money with you.
I
And
know.
also,
I see the fact they're gonna have content trips, like the
yeah.
smaller kind of countries that, don't get as much attention. It's gonna be a thing now. This
Mhm,
is
mhm.
this is one of my predictions.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I agree that that's a good one too, because it's like, um, yeah, like how do you show the best of your country in a way that Americans that will entice Americans, and since influencers are basically already creating that content, it would be easy to kind of
Yeah.
create those like partnerships. And I think there is a way of doing it that's not too like influencer, like I think there is a
Yeah.
backlash coming for, for influencers and the amount of like, we saw it during the World Cup, right? Where it's like, oh, why are these influencers
Why are you here?
yeah, coming to the World Cup when it's like clearly they don't like soccer or they don't care,
Yeah.
but it's a way of getting attention for the sport
Yeah.
that they otherwise wouldn't have gotten. So I think that is a bargain that has to be made in
Yeah.
order to get that attention. Okay, so a
I
couple
think,
lessons. Oh no, go for.
oh yeah, I was gonna say, I think that there's like something to be said about content that's just, or like just consumption that can
Hmm.
turn people off. It's like you're everywhere, you're doing everything. It's just pure capitalism for pure consumption. And I think that turns some people off. But
Hmm.
I think you have to be smart about who you choose to do the marketing for you,
Hmm.
and how that's going to land with people. And that's all in the strategy. But something to think about because it can seem like overconsumption. And I think some people are very averse to that.
Yeah. That is the thing too, right? I mean, you have horror stories of, right, like the one that stands out to me is the Great Barrier Reef, right, which is
Yeah,
slowly dying because people keep
right.
touching it, and it's just like, come on, like, is that,
Stop it.
or you see like,
Hmm.
people touching animals that they shouldn't be touching,
Hmm.
or doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So that, I mean, that's always going to be an
Or
issue,
like the
and
number of people trying to climb Mount Everest right now is like
right.
wild. There's like a line on a mountain. Like who would have thought
Yeah.
that there would be you would be stuck in a line. It's not a bagel shop or like the new ice cream spot. You're up the side of a mountain. But that is like classic overconsumption of tourism, right? Because there's so many people that are exploiting an industry that was created to, yes, get more tourism, get more people to the area, but it was meant for climbers, like
Mhm.
serious mountaineers who wanted to do the thing. And now it's just a bunch of people who are like, oh my God, I can hire a guy to like shove me up
Carry
a
my shit for
mountain
me.
and carry my
Yeah.
stuff for me. And they're actually the experienced like climbers, not me. I don't know anything.
Uh-huh.
There's this really interesting article that talks about how there's like movie screenings on Mount Everest, and I was like, what is going on?
Oh,
Like
wow.
this is the type of travel and tourism I am not here for. Because
Yeah.
this is just overconsumption. You're ruining the mountain. Like there's trash everywhere, and like I don't know, the marketing got too far. It went too
Yeah,
far.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. No, that's crazy. Definitely, I guess, for that, to those Americans, like, please try to, at least, do things as they do them within, that culture, that city, and don't just try
yeah,
to impose what you would normally want to do back home in America.
yeah. I think that was. It's also just like I think the government allowed so many people. But it's crazy. I mean, that mountainside has a trash problem now, which who would have thought?
Couple lessons for me. Um, two things that really stood out from this article. One is, that bifurcation of who your audience is. You have the wealthy boomers and
Yeah,
you have the Gen Zers that
yeah,
want to experience, a life or something different, something unique, right? Those are two completely different audiences. So you have to know who you're targeting, when you're trying to get them to come to your country, right? Like, it's not the same audience. They're not looking for the same experiences. They're not looking for the same, thing from you. So you have to know who you're talking about. So creating that message or narrative that's going to work for the audience that you're trying to get to come to you, is going to work in your favor, because if you're not creating experiences for wealthy boomers, then they're not going to be satisfied with your
yeah.
product or your service, right?
Mhm.
If you know that what you're doing is creating more of a FOMO experience for Gen Zers, then, like, that's who you should be targeting, your product for. So that's something to, keep an eye out for. It's like, who are you targeting, and are you speaking their language in order to get them to come? The other thing, is, for me, this article was I saw more opportunity than I saw, the ragging on, the American tourist,
Yeah,
which, yes, at
yeah.
times, we can be loud and boisterous and,
Who
want to
isn't?
do things our way and not, like, fit into the culture. But I think there is a way for, countries and cities to, do things the way that they want to do them, in a culturally appropriate way that is welcoming and inviting to American
Yeah,
tourists, and that are positive instead of being negative. And so, like,
yeah,
figure out those ways that, like, you can do that, because there's
yeah,
a lot more opportunity here, for countries to grow and to get Americans to spend their money there, if
yeah.
they, want that, and if they are actively seeking it out. It reminds me of Widow's Bay. Have you seen that? Where it's like
Oh
the
yeah,
whole
so good.
goal, right? The whole goal
Yeah,
of, like, the mayor there is he's trying to, become the next Martha's Vineyard by
yep,
attracting, tourists. And so he's, like, working really hard to, like, do that.
yeah,
So, maybe it's just the marketer in me, but I see a lot more opportunity here. And I hope that these countries and cities, come up with creative ways to create unique experiences that will attract the American tourists and their money.
I mean, speaking of just overall worldwide, not just American tourists, but every 4 years we see how the World Cup really brings people together,
Hmm.
over shared experiences, shared goals, shared, enjoyment. And I think countries and other they will do good if they try to recreate that kind of energy around their countries, their cities, because it shows that how much people love actually being around other people,
Hmm.
different cultures. So I think that's something I love every 4 years is kind of seeing that amalgamation happen.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that that's the possibility here. It's like, how do you get people to participate also with your
Yep.
country and not just go there to take an Instagram photo? you know, they'll
Right.
probably still do that
Exactly.
too.
You can do both,
Right,
but
exactly. Exactly.
yeah,
Okay, we
yeah.
can move on to your topic.
Okay. I really wanted to talk about Hilary Duff because I have so much FOMO from not actually being able to go to one of her concerts because
Uh-huh.
she's not coming to India yet. I'm hoping that she does. But um she's been on like a generational run, right? She's
Yeah.
not just doing a comeback, but she's kind of changing the entire way that the world thought about her. And, she was a teenage star and she grew up publicly and she was in the limelight a lot. She was in that kind of gossipy tabloidy area that, age where everything about her was nitpicked by all the media. And she's come back as a 38-year-old woman who's had kids and she's had a whole life. And she's not just the teenage girl that we knew, but she's kind of us who grew up. And I love that framing, right?
Hmm.
Because her tour is not just about, I'm coming, I'm playing my hits, and I'm going. She's been trying really hard to do the Lizzie McGuire thing of like, I was this and I'm also this, and hold both her identities, give them equal amount of space and show that she's like a mixture of all these things.
Hmm.
Here's who I am now, here's everything you took to get there. And she's doing that with her music, her tour, the guests that she's been getting on her shows, the merch that she's been selling, the PR boxes. I remember one of her launch videos was her going through her closet and she was like looking at all her iconic outfits, but then she put on a new one. And I think that was really symbolic and lovely of her to say, I am all these things, but now I'm also this. So I think that marketing strategy was really, really deliberate because I think after the Eras tour, everyone was like, nostalgia, nostalgia, like
Hmm.
hits, hits, hits. And I think she was trying to be more than that, but also acknowledge where she came from and what gave her that fame and popularity and stardom, right? Um, anyway, she's been selling out all of her shows worldwide. Um, she's been reclaiming all the talk about her body image as well with, her campaign with Ladder. And she's been talking about her strength training and all these things. And I think that it's a really wholesome moment for her. And as someone who grew up with Hilary Duff, it's really nice to see this very positive, nostalgic teenage pop.
Yeah, I think what I have loved about it is that it very smartly mixed all the nostalgia with where she is now, where
Yeah,
it was a admission of like, yes, I have been this person through these
yeah,
different stages of my life. And instead of um feeling bad about it or embarrassed about it.
yeah.
She was like, "Yeah, this is me. I was
This
Lizzie
is who I am.
McGuire. Like
Yeah,
I, was a teen pop star.
yeah,
I went ahead, I got married and I had 4 kids. I've had some drama in my life.
yep,
And, the other thing was having Good Charlotte come out on stage with
yes,
her,
so good.
and then having, the next night I think was like a tribute to Aaron Carter. So
Yep,
it just shows how positive and optimistic she is and how well she's seen like her whole history. And I think at a time when women in particular are denigrated for like their history,
yeah,
their
yeah,
stories, the fact that she
yeah,
was so willingly able to claim it and say like, yes,
Yeah.
this is me, all of it, the good and the
All of it.
bad,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
shows how much she has grown. And I think it also gives an example to the rest of us, who
Yeah.
have, similar stories of like, yeah,
Yeah.
we're almost 40 years old, like
Yeah.
we are
Yeah.
essentially almost middle aged, right? And instead of it having to be like, oh, trying to be like a 25-year-old pop star, it's like, no, I'm a 40-year-old pop star and this is my life. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
having her audience engage with her in that way is
Yeah.
great because it shows that you don't always have to play for like that, a younger audience. You can bring
Yeah.
your current audience along and the younger demographics will come and pay attention to you and learn a
Yeah.
bit of history, you know,
I know. I know.
of like the
It's
pop
not a
stars of old.
comeback.
Hmm.
It's not a comeback. It's like a self-reckoning.
Yeah.
She's like, this is me. This is my, and I think she's done a really good job of staying true to herself
Hmm.
and of staying true to who she is throughout all the marketing, the
Hmm.
tours, and I think she said something really nice that she said, I don't know if I'll ever have another moment quite like this or another summer quite like this. So I
Hmm.
think she's also acknowledging that she knows that it's not always going to be this way. It's
Hmm.
not, but this is like a moment in time that she's really grateful for. And I
Yeah.
think that that's really sweet. And I think it acknowledges how our audience feels. And I think it
Hmm.
acknowledges where we've all landed, as adults who grew up with her. I
Yeah. Yeah.
really like
Yeah.
that. Really smart. I know it's like part marketing, but I think it's also really smart, but it feels true to who she is, genuinely
Yeah.
meaningful.
I mean, I think that's why it works because it
Yeah.
is coming from her, right? Like the best
Yeah.
marketing comes from the person or from like the
Yeah.
founders or like the individuals at the company that make the company what it is, right? Um, the
Yeah.
other thing I want to like call out here is that she has her latest album has gotten rave reviews, right?
Yeah.
And part of the reason I think that is because she's talking about or singing about where her life is now
Yeah.
and not trying to cater to a demographic that isn't like her audience, right? And I think that
Yeah.
that's something that people should remember is like who your target market is, like who your target audience is, right? Like she knows who her audience is and she's talking to them, and I think that that's
Yeah.
like a really valuable insight for artists and for marketers, to know who you're talking to and how to talk to them
Yeah.
and engage in that like conversation so that like your fans know that you're acknowledging them, right? And the
Yeah.
fact that like all these like tour moments of like bringing in what dreams are made of from like the Lizzie McGuire movie and doing these
Yeah.
like concerts and bringing in like these like special
Good
guests
Charlotte.
like
Yeah.
right, Good Charlotte, and like doing bringing
Yeah.
RuPaul. It's like acknowledging all these different facets of her life, but then
Yeah.
also doing the little Easter eggs so that like her audience is like, oh yes, I remember this like this point in her
Yep.
life and I was there,
Yep.
so it's a really cool way to like bring the past up with like the new. And it's very interesting that she's been able to also mix in her current music, right? Because so many of the like concerts that you're seeing from like bands that are coming out, um I don't want to say that they rely too much on like their old hits or the nostalgia, but that seems to be what their audience is demanding of them, which kind of
Yeah.
sucks, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
they also want to grow, they also want to come out with like new music and
Yeah.
new new songs. So I think that has to be like a thing that artists have to push back on their own audience about, where it's like, yes, that is who I am and I have brought this as fan service for you, but then also please use this as a time to also support me in my new endeavor.
Right.
And like come with me. And I think that that's something that marketers can learn from this, where it's like yes, acknowledge like where you're at. I mean, let's talk about the Instagram change, right? Where it's like, was that really
Yeah.
necessary? Is that a thing? Like, are you just changing to change for change's sake, or is
Probably.
there a reason
Probably.
for what you're doing, right? And I feel like
Yeah.
taking people along in the journey and getting them to understand why you're doing something or why you're you're at where you're at now is part of, the process. And like what we were talking about earlier, right? It's like showing those behind the scenes and like your thought process and like why you are there um is what people want if you want them to follow you along in the journey. And I think
Yeah.
that's why the Instagram thing feels so random, because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
so you're just changing that part of it, but you're not changing anything else. Why out of nowhere, like, are you doing this? Like, there was just no explanation to it that like made sense.
Yeah.
And even pairing that up against like the Coca-Cola change, which was like, we're still doing the classic Coca-Cola font, but we're adding this like
Right.
new font to it. That
Yeah.
made
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
right? And so that's a thing I think a lesson from me from this,
Yeah.
where marketers can learn for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think the lesson for me is just really a master class on how to talk to your audience, right? Especially when you're coming back after a long time, launching
Mhm.
something new. She's been really good about, like you said, taking audiences with her, but also being kind of holding space for both parts of her, right? She's like not dressing up as Lizzie McGuire, but she will sing, "This is what dreams are made of." And I think that
Right.
that is the perfect combination of the two things, where she's like, okay, I'm doing all this, but I'm also this person now. And I love that for her. I love this new era, and I love that she's chosen to share it very honestly and authentically, very, publicly. And I'm really happy for her. Like, she's doing really good for herself.
Yeah, I know.
Makes me right? Like, don't you just like, I feel like it's like a millennial thing where like I love to see them succeed, after so long too. So I'm here for it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
devastated when they canceled the Lizzie McGuire reboot. So
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's funny because it's like she's had all these hits against her, right? Where it's like
right,
she
right,
had, the Lizzie McGuire show not move forward because she wanted to be it actually she
yeah,
wanted it to be where she's at now, right? It's to show
yeah,
a more grown up
yeah,
Lizzie McGuire, and like the studio
yeah.
was just like, no, we can't do that. Like, who wants
It's
to
not
see that?
Disney enough. Right.
Exactly,
We
right?
do.
And
And
here
she was
she
like,
is
okay, I'll just do
proving,
it.
right? And here she is
Yeah.
proving that her audience wants to follow her. I do wonder
Yeah.
if this is a way maybe of like trying to, get that back up and going, Maybe it's
Listen,
not a
I'm here
Disney
for it.
show, it's a Hulu show, right? Like,
I'm
that
here
is a
for
more
it.
grown up thing, And then,
I would watch that.
there was also the drama with was it Ashley Tisdale that happened? Was that last
Oh
year,
yeah, the moms.
Yeah, the
The
mom group
Isn't
thing.
that becoming a TV show?
Is it? I don't know. And
I
I
feel
think what
like
I
I heard
learned.
about something like
Oh,
that.
really? And I think what I learned from that was just that she's one of the most well-liked celebrities that's out there, which is
Yeah.
really interesting. Because, I think that's also a reason why her fans want to follow her, is because she is
Yeah.
well-liked, and, she is taking people along on the journey with her. And then obviously there was like the divorce before that, and just all like the drama. I feel like
Yeah.
she has kind of let us into her life. But then
Yeah.
also kept like that distance of like,
Yeah.
let me take also my
Healthy.
time to like do, me and talk about like these
Healthy
things as well.
distance.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no, Ashley Tisdale is executive producing a half-hour dark comedy for Netflix called Toxic Moms. So yes, we're gonna see that sometime next year.
Wow.
She's cashing in on it. She figured it out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my God, that's super interesting. I hope
We'll
that
come back next year
Hilary
and
Duff
see if it's
does
any
a
good.
yeah, a counter
Yep.
program against
Positive
it. That's so
moms.
yeah. Exactly. Okay. Awesome. So let's move on to takeaways for the whole episode. And I think there's a
Yeah.
couple of through lines from all of these, which I always love. So the main one for me is that everything is content now, right?
Yep.
Especially that authentic and behind the scenes type content, because people really want to
Yeah.
know like that you're being real and how things are coming together. So in terms of Hollywood, what are the types of content that you could be, putting together that's more elevated, video content or, written content that isn't AI, that you're having partnerships with and that you're showing some of that, behind the scenes, right? Like people want to see how things
Yeah.
are coming together. I think that's another thing that we saw with the Mamdani thing where showing that competency porn, showing how things come together, that then creates a level of trust just from the content that you're
Yeah.
creating, that allows people to believe in you and take a chance on you for the things that you're trying to bring them, guide them to,
Yeah.
and not just the baseline things that you are already doing. For
Yeah.
the American tourists, that's content creation there. Like, how are you getting Americans to pay attention to your country and welcome them, so that they do start spending their money with you? And then,
Yeah.
the whole Hilary Duff concert is a huge content creation, platform
Yeah.
for her, where she's at and her audience. Um, Another thing is how important it is for each of these modes of content and the creators to have authenticity. Like, how are you showing your company and yourself, you as like marketers, your founders, the stars, showing them in a way that like you know puts your brand in, or highlights your brand in a nice way, and not
Mhm.
just um creating content for content's sake. Like
Yeah. Just
people
putting a
really want.
celebrity in it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not about the
Yeah.
celebrity being in there. It's like, well, why this celebrity? Why this idea? Like, that's what
Yeah.
people are looking for. Any takeaways from you?
Yeah, I think one of my takeaways is that nostalgia cannot be your only play.
Hmm.
I think the nostalgia thing is like a one trick wonder. It'll work, it'll be great, and then what? You can't,
Hmm.
like, that cannot be her only thing. Even Hilary Duff, whoever's trying to make a comeback or whatever, you have to actually build and look to the future in some way or the other, or it's just gonna be like, oh, one summer of sold out shows, and like then what? You know.
Hmm. Hmm.
So there has to be planning for the future, and I think she's done a really good job of balancing both of those. So I think that's one thing that I'll say. I think the other thing that's shining for me throughout everything we've talked about is craft. Like I think
Hmm.
craft is going to be so important to showcase, especially with the rise of AI and AI slop and brand slop and all that, is going to be how are you an expert or a craftsman at what you are doing?
Hmm.
It's not enough to just put something out anymore. You have to show like excellence and talent, and I think that's going to shine through like everything that you're seeing on social media that is bombarding you at all times, right? Like all the ads, all the discourse. I think that's what's going to shine for a lot of people. And I think that's why you see everyone went to see the Odyssey because it's not like it's a new story,
Yeah.
but it's about the craft and the way that it was handled that it got everyone's attention.
Hmm.
So I think that's going to be really important both for Hollywood and the brands, like that story that we talked about. Hilary Duff has been showing her craft, in like a
Hmm.
different way. I think it's gonna boil down to that. That's gonna be like the key differentiator with all of these different kind of things we're seeing coming up.
Yeah, I love that. I think, yeah, from what we talked about today, is there's so many ideas there of how you can create unique content or experiences based on what already exists for you and your brand and your country and your city, your people, who you are. And each of
Yeah,
these four examples have really found that, and are doing it in a unique way, in a
yeah,
unique enough way that people are interested solely based on,
yeah.
the who Mamdani is,
Content.
who Hilary Duff
Yeah,
is, right?
yeah.
And that's definitely like, how do you get to that point? It's a good thing to think about.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gia, for being here. How can people find you?
Okay, so you can follow me on X. It's Jasing Gia. It's the same thing on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, giajasing.com. And email me, chat me, whatever. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. And then I'm at Sonia Bashez everywhere. And then you can follow the podcast at Meme Team Pod on Spotify, YouTube, and TikTok. Bye.